The Mariners are fresh off being swept for the first time this year, and vibes continue to get worse, but all signs point to them still being aggressive on the trade market. We'll talk about the state of the team, some of the latest trade rumors around the league coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, July 25th, 2024. This is Tiding Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to go over some of the latest trade rumors around the league that pertain to the Mariners, or could pertain to the Mariners. There's quite a few of them. We'll also talk about what happened yesterday, unfortunately, and what's happened in the last 3 days in general, and just the state of this team. But before we do that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Booking.com. Booking. Yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. And we got a new show on there coming your way later today. But let's go back to yesterday here, Colby. Unfortunately, let's go back to yesterday. I know you're super thrilled to talk about that, as am I.
Yay.
The Mariners have been swept for the first time this year. It took them all the way to July 24th for that to happen. And it happened against one of the worst teams in baseball, in the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who they've lost 6 consecutive games to. That's fun. Gregory Santos is also hurt. He had to leave this game prematurely with a knee injury. We don't have an update on that. So the vibes are just great. The Mariners scored 1 run yet again, just as they did in each of the first 2 games. Now, some of this was a bit of just, bad luck, because when it rains, it pours. They had loaded the bases, no outs, and Tyler Locklear hit a ball hard on the ground, and Luis Rengifo just so happened to be playing down the line, which Mike Blowers even said on the broadcast, you're usually not taught to play that close to the line with bases loaded as a third baseman. But it just so happened that Rengifo was there to make the play. So, yeah, vibes are just absolutely great. They're not playing today, which, thank God. Hopefully they use this off day to do something on the trade market, which, again, rumors are really starting to kick up. We'll get into that a little later on. But overall, Colby, how are you feeling about things right now? Talk to us.
I don't feel anything.
Same. I'm broken. I'm a broken man.
I just, in like the last 4 days, you DFA Ty France, which fine, whatever. We had that whole saga to deal with. Julio, gets a high ankle sprain and he heads to the IL. JP gets hit and fractures his pinky or whatever. So he hits the IL, and then Gregory Santos struggles a little bit, and then he hurts his knee, and he didn't get hit by a baseball off the knee or anything. He just hurt it, and he had to leave the game. All the way to you blowing yet another game against the worst, one of the worst teams in baseball, because you scored a grand total of 3 runs in a 3-game series. As your offense is getting worked by Griffin Canning, who's a scrub. Things are going great. They're going absolutely fantastic. They're playing sloppy baseball. They're throwing the ball around the yard. They're walking guys. Particularly the bullpen is having a real issue with walks right now. They're just not playing competitive baseball, and they've already cost one of their hitting coaches their job, probably going to cost their manager his job if they keep playing like this. The sheer ineptitude of this team and the effort level of which they've displayed coming out of the All-Star break is going to negatively impact people's lives. And I would like to see them look like they care about that, because it's one thing if you just can't hit. Okay, whatever. We knew that this offense was challenged, and now It's a particularly challenging part, especially when you're without Julio, who's kind of supposed to make the whole thing go. Can you not throw the ball around the infield then? Can you make play? Can you hit the cutoff man? Can you catch the baseball? Can you not?
That's been the most frustrating thing over the last couple of days.
Right. It's, airmailing a ball to home plate because you're trying to make walking a guy with the bases loaded. It's back-to-back 2-out walks before you give up the game-winning hit. Like, it is all those little things that, getting picked off. Like, it is all these things that are just 100. Those are effort-based plays. Those are not like physical mistakes. Those are not like my swing's not in a good place right now. Those are mental mistakes. You lack mental fortitude because you're not making these plays that you have to make, and they're basic baseball plays. We saw, I don't know, 4 errors in the series. That's not counting the base running mistakes. That we've seen a couple guys get picked off in the last homestand. Like, they're not doing anything well. And if you're not going to play well, then you need to play like clean. You need to not make the silly mistakes that, we learn are cardinal sins in first year of Little League, right? Catch. You have to be able to play catch, make a good throw, catch the ball when it's thrown to you. Like, these are the very basic little things that require really no skill. No skill. These are things you should be able to do with their eyes closed, and they're not doing it. They're going through the motions. And right now what you have is a situation where you have 5 dudes who are essentially going out there every single day and pitching their what's off every single night. And they're getting no support from the other 21, including the bullpen now. Now all of a sudden the bullpen's a problem. So it's just unfortunate. And the really sad and frustrating thing about this is that we watch this team. We watch the 5 starters that are going out there. They're taking the ball every day. And you watch them and you say, this team could go to the World Series. Like, this pitching starting rotation is World Series caliber. You can win the World Series with this rotation. And it just feels like the other 21 guys in this clubhouse don't really care. They don't, whatever. We could win a World Series this year, but that would be hard. Like, we'll just kind of do this. And when you're playing sloppy baseball and you're not hitting, it's hard to watch that and look at it and be like, oh, well, it's hard to come to any conclusion other than like, oh, these guys have checked out. Like, they're not interested in this, because that's what sloppy baseball looks like. It always looks like you just don't care. Like, you're not putting in the work. Now, we don't know what these guys are doing behind the scenes. I imagine most of them are putting in the work. But right now, as you have a rotten clubhouse where there's clearly some kind of division and some kind of internal struggle in, it's spilling over to the field where nobody can hit. They scored 3 runs in a series against one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball, like bottom 5 pitching staff. They scored 3 runs total. Yep. It's that team. So the offense is inept. The defense has been terrible. The bullpen has been bad. Like, I think you've lost 6 games in a row to the Angels, and you've only scored, like, in those 6 games, I think you scored like 8 runs. So obviously the offense is at fault, sure. But you had a lead in 4 of them. You had a lead after the 6th inning in 4 of those games, and you lost all of them.
So the Mariners pitching staff as a whole, and this includes the bullpen, since the All-Star break, 2.67 ERA, 2.83 FIP, 3.05 xFIP, 10 Ks per 9. That leads the league. 2 walks per 9, and 54 innings pitched. They've been worth 1.3 F4 over the last 6 games, and they are 1-5.
Yeah.
So yeah, even with the bullpen struggles, this falls on the offense completely, 100%. Right, because even with the shaky outing from Stanek and what happened yesterday with Santos and all that, right, you were ultimately in that position because you only scored 1 run.
The Mariners have scored 11 runs since the All-Star break.
The Rockies scored 20 yesterday in 1 game.
Yep.
The Colorado Rockies. We were joking about this before. Well, not even really joking, because it's just true. Before we hit record on this thing, like, imagine this team with the A's offense. The Oakland Athletics. The Oakland Athletics, who are moving to Sacramento next year, and their owner doesn't give a damn about them. They're a league average offense.
And I've said it, I don't know, a couple times now over the last few days on social media that if the Mariners had a league average offense, they would win 100 games. Like if the Mariners had a league average offense for this entire season, they'd probably still have a double-digit lead on the Astros, and that's with the Astros surging. Now the Astros fit a little bit of a skid. They lost a series to Texas. They took 2 or 3 from you, and then they just lost 2 or 3 to Oakland. So it does look like Houston's slowing down a little bit too, which is good timing. But now here come the Texas Rangers. Now they're playing well, and all of a sudden we got a 3-team race. So, and all that would have to happen for that not to be the case. So Mariners just have to be average on offense, like not even 15th out of 30. Like if they were 20th out of 30, they probably still have a 6-game lead.
Yeah,
like it's unbearably bad. It's awful. You can't watch it. And then when you stack on top of that, all the silly stuff they're doing defensively, all the errors that they're making, all the 2-out walks that we're seeing from the bullpen, like the bullpen's walk rate this month is just horrendous. It's been awful. Stanek's walking dudes, Voth is walking dudes, Thornton's walking dudes, like all those guys who have been strike throwers all year, now they're not. And so it just happens to coincide with the bullpen is really struggling when the offense is literally just untenably bad.
Yeah.
Just
historically bad. So we have quite a few rumors to talk about around the league that pertain to the Mariners or could pertain to the Mariners. We'll go over those in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Stitch Fix and Tax Network USA. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That is what I get with Stitch Fix. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. Then I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And they send 5 just for me pieces plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. I keep what works and send back the rest. And if you don't love something, just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Now is the best time to get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time only. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $100 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign-up. Offer does not include kids' fixes. Here on Locked On Mariners, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000. That's 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked on. See the link in this episode description. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. You can catch the Mariners and the White Sox tomorrow night and over the course of the weekend on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So the trade deadline is 5 days away, folks. We are getting close to that point. And apparently saw something on Twitter. Not sure if it's true, but saw this on Twitter, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes ago from, I believe it was Mariners Sir on Twitter, that the White Sox GM basically said that things are really starting to pick up in the market overall, and he could see trades happen as soon as today. So that's encouraging news because nothing has happened since the All-Star break. So We got a lot of rumors, though. I want to go over some of them here because they either directly pertain to the Mariners or they could pertain to the Mariners. So let's start with the big one. So Ryan Divish was on Jason Puckett's show, as he is a lot lately, yesterday, and said that the White Sox, I think it was their assistant GM or special assistant, whatever, doesn't matter. Someone high up with the White Sox was in attendance at the Mariners Angels games this week, and that the White Sox also had scouts in Tacoma once again. So again, they had already been there earlier. I believe it was in June, or it might have been earlier this month. They were in Tacoma. We know that they've had scouts in Modesto as well at some point this year. Seems like a lot of groundwork is being laid for something between the Mariners and the White Sox, and obviously there's a very big name there that your mind easily goes to. The other thing, before I kick it to you, Colby, John Heyman. Yeah, it's John Hammond. He did say yesterday that the Mariners have been very aggressive on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Take that for what you will, considering the source, because that information is definitely not coming from the Seattle Mariners. I can tell you that with confidence. And Sportsnet, which they're owned by Rogers, which owns the Blue Jays, and that's the television network that the Blue Jays are on. They reported yesterday, like, they're not trading Bo, they're not trading Vlad, they're not trading Varsho, they're not trading really any of those guys that are under contract beyond this year. So a lot of conflicting information right now on what the Blue Jays are doing. But it doesn't seem likely that that Vlad Jr. is going to get traded, but apparently the Mariners have been aggressive on acquiring him. So those are the two biggest names that we've talked about, obviously, a lot over the last month and a half here. But again, because it's Heyman, I don't really want to focus on that report too much. So let's talk about the White Sox stuff here. Again, it seems like all signs are pointing to something happening in between the White Sox and the Mariners, right?
I think all signs are pointing to they're going to try. Like they're really pushing it, and the fact that you're sending special assistants to the GM directly to Major League games, obviously they're looking for somebody or something in particular. I would assume that guy would be Tyler Locklear, because we had heard that the White Sox had scouts in Tacoma who were there essentially sitting on Locklear and Clase earlier this month. Now, is Locklear going to be like a huge piece of that deal? No, he's probably a third piece in a Luis Robert type of trade, maybe even a fourth piece. But the fact that they're watching those arms, like Brian Wu, I can't imagine is actually going to be available for a Luis Robert trade, but maybe he did pitch on, what was it, Friday? Looked really good, so maybe that's a possibility. But it does feel like there's a lot of smoke around the idea that the Mariners are involved in the Luis Robert market. Not only are we hearing, White Sox have scouts all, camping on multiple teams in the system, but they're sending guys to Seattle specifically to scout some guys on the big league roster. These are the things you do when like talks are serious. Like when you have a team that's motivated to sell, and you have a team that's obviously, speaking a language, let's say, that is forcing the seller to listen. So very obviously the Mariners are doing, we're past the exploratory talks here between the White Sox and the Mariners. It doesn't mean something gets done, but we're past kind of like, hey, what do like we have reached the point where they're almost certainly talking specific players. They're talking specific packages. Yeah. They're probably exchanging medicals at this point as well. It again doesn't mean something has to get done. And while Luis Robert is the obvious guy here, I mean, for all we know, they just can't quite get that deal across the finish line. But what if the Mariners go out and they get Eric Fetty and then they move Brian Wu to the bullpen, and they kind of go, well, Wu's our bullpen ad and Fetty's going to take his spot. Like, maybe they like Andrew Vaughn and they think that they can fix him or whatever. So Robert is the obvious name here. And
Tommy Pham, Michael Kopech, etc. Sure.
Mm-hmm. And and for what it's worth, the Mariners have been linked to Robert more than any other team. Like you can't. the national media can't mention Luis Robert without mentioning the Seattle Mariners as a real contender there. So you kind of add all that up. It certainly does seem like the idea that the Mariners are going to, that they're not interested in like spending big in their farm system to go get potential impact talent. It sounds like that is just simply not true. Like that idea that they're just going to not be willing to trade top prospects at this deadline, despite how poorly they're playing. It does feel like we can put that to rest. Now, eventually you have to land the guy, right? Like talk is cheap. And it's like, yeah, we were willing to move some of our top guys, but we didn't get any of them. It's like, well, you don't get credit for trying, right? Like you have to actually land some of these guys. So, so overall, it's all good news. Obviously, like the Mariners have been linked nationally to Vlad Jr., even though I don't think he's going to get traded. But the fact that they're aggressive or whatever, for whatever that's worth, and then obviously the direct information coming from Divish and from a few others, not just in the last few days, but over the last month or so, about how the White Sox have been sitting on Modesto. The White Sox did have people sitting on specific players in Tacoma, that the White Sox are sending guys to Seattle to watch, some of these pieces that could be in a trade here. Those are clear indicators to me, at least, that there's a lot of smoke around this idea. And when there's smoke, there's fire. So yeah, I do think that we've passed the stage of due diligence. I'm not even saying that Luis Robert acquisition is likely at this point, but we've certainly passed the point where it's just like, yeah, they're just pretending to be like the jaded Mariner fans, like, oh, that's just all fan service. They just want to, oh, look, we tried.
Yeah.
No, we're past that point. Like there's legitimate interest between these two sides to get a deal done. Clearly they've exchanged names and all that. Like,
well, and considering how much we've seen White Sox brass in Tacoma and Modesto, now in Seattle, like there's interest from them as well in what the Mariners have to offer. Again, it could be as simple as, something for, maybe they were looking at Emerson Hancock in Tacoma, and it's like a Hancock for Pham and Tanner Banks type of deal, or Kopech or whatever. It could be something smaller like that. Or maybe they're looking at, Emerson Hancock and Tyler Locklear as like third and fourth pieces to a Luis Robert deal.
Yeah.
That's obviously my hope, right? I think that's everyone's hope here, is that they're trying to get Robert done instead of, more of a lower level player. But yeah, there's a lot of smoke here. There's a lot of groundwork evidently being done between these two teams. Just seems like something's probably going to happen, that they're not going to let all of this go for naught, but we'll see.
Right. And the White Sox only have a handful of players that make a ton of sense for the Mariners. So it is reasonable.
And the other thing too with this Robert deal, like they have to nail this. Yeah. They have to nail it. This is their last big chip that they have to trade outside of, Crochet, right?
Crochet.
But like
obviously Crochet's, workload limitations are going to complicate his
he might not even get traded because of that.
Right. So we'll see. But yeah, the White Sox certainly I could see the White Sox taking Robert all the way up to the deadline, just to make sure, because like you said, they have to nail this return. It is the last big piece they have for a couple of years, at least, to trade.
And how willing are they to go, you know what, let's just take it to the winter and reassess things with Robert, because like they don't have to do it right now, but the risk there that you're taking is that he gets hurt again. Right. And the injury concerns and kind of that reputation that has ultimately been built around him continues to grow.
Or the strikeout numbers don't regress or whatever, right? He continues to play he's not playing great right now, but there's risk to it too. So I would say that, like, if I were just betting, I would bet if Robert is traded, I would bet on him being traded to the Mariners over any other specific team, but I wouldn't bet on Robert being traded to the Mariners if it was against the field, right? But
sure,
it just, you hear the Mariners every time Robert's up, the Mariners, and at this stage, it feels like more than just speculation from the national guys, because we do know that there is, like, these steps that they have taken all seem to indicate that they are, they're past the 50-yard line at the very least. Maybe they're not in the red zone yet, but they're marching down the field a little bit here.
Yeah. All right, so we got a few other rumors to go over here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is once again brought to you by Booking.com and Game Time.
With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, I'm talking about your rival cities. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city. Even a Mariners fan can have a great time down in Houston, whether you're watching Cal Raleigh hit one into the Crawford boxes or chowing down on some authentic Texas barbecue. Maybe you're doing both at the same time. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or the Booking.com app. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and I get to see the view of every seat in the house, so I know exactly what I'm buying. Game Time's last-minute deals give you up to 60% in savings buying last minute for sports, music, comedy, and more. And to avoid any surprises at checkout, you can turn on their all-in pricing to see the full cost, fees included. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch the M's and the White Sox this weekend on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. And how great would it be if tomorrow we saw a tweet from, Ryan Divish or Shannon Drayer or Adam Jude or whoever saying Luis Robert is on the field in warm-ups wearing a Mariners hat right now. That'd be awesome. That'd be super cool.
It would help the vibes, that's for sure.
Great for the old dopamine machine. I think we all could use that.
Really, any name from anybody outside the org would hit pretty nice right now.
Yeah.
Waters walked into the clubhouse. Oh yeah, let's go.
Yeah. 100 WRC plus bat is here. Oh my God.
Cedric Mullins is in the Mariners clubhouse. And it's like, what? An 87 WRC plus and can't hit lefties? Heck yeah. That's my 3-hole hitter right there.
So let's start with that. There's been reports that the Orioles, despite being 20 games above 500 right now, and firmly in the AL East lead, are open to trading Ryan Mountcastle and Cedric Mullins, who you just mentioned. Now, Mountcastle is going to be expensive because he's still got, I think, 2.5 years left. He's hitting well right now. I was a little surprised in general just to hear that they're open to trading him. I would think that would be like part of a Tariq Skubal deal if they are going to deal him. I don't think that's just like, give us Ryan Mountcastle for prospects.
Yeah.
Unless they think they're going to do a huge deal and they want to try and replenish by trading Mountcastle. I don't know.
Right. I think Mountcastle would probably be part of a 3-team deal. Mm-hmm. Like maybe it's maybe, I don't know, the Orioles pivot at the last minute and they want Robert, right? And then it's like,
right.
Well, we want to trade Mountcastle in this deal, but the White Sox don't want him. The White Sox want a prospect. Well, what do we just take a prospect from Seattle and we send Mountcastle to them, 3-team deal type of thing. I think that's where Mountcastle could come into play, particularly for Seattle, which is the only team we care about. So,
right. Yeah.
Specifically Mountcastle to Seattle, that feels like it would be a 3-team type of situation.
And then Cedric Mullins, he just feels destined to be a Mariner eventually one day.
Probably just because he plays so well at T-Mobile Park.
Right. I just don't know if now is the right time because he's one of these guys that, has had success in the past, but he's having a down year. You would be putting a lot of faith in him figuring it out. So I'm probably out at that point. Again, like I've said, and I'll continue to reiterate until the deadline is over and done with. Get me guys that are hitting right now. I don't really care who they are. Just give me like 3 guys that have a WRC plus north of 100, and Cedric Mullins does not fit that bill right now.
I mean, I think the problem here with Mullins is first things first, good defender in center field, which you can kind of use right now because Julio's going to be out for a while.
Yeah.
You get him for a year and 3 months. Like he's not a rental.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's a guy who clearly had one kind of outlier season. And since then, he's been a part-time player, more or less. This year, the struggles have gotten even worse than they were last year, though. And it sounds like the Orioles are really only interested in trading either one of these guys for for starting pitching help. It's like, well, you're not trading Brian Wu or Bryce Miller and
would you trade Emerson Hancock for
Sure, but the Orioles aren't going to trade. Like, what does Emerson Hancock do for the Orioles? Nothing. He's not one of their 5 best. So no, I mean, like, would I do that? Probably, because, I need a center fielder right now. And then Mullins kind of goes into this, like, he plays left field against righties and then he's a pinch runner type. I don't know. And also part of this is, do the Mariners think they can help Cedric Mullins get back to where he was a couple of years ago? Do they think they have a tweak that they can make with him? Maybe. And that's always an X factor. And that's always kind of a risky thing to run. Is like, well, if we can get this tweak implemented and we can, get it figured out before the end of the year, this guy could really pop. Great. But if you don't, you're risking a little bit. So yeah, neither guy is super exciting to me. I just don't see Mountcastle as like a viable, candidate under normal circumstances. Although I think the fit is pretty good. That profile at T-Mobile Park, I think actually works pretty well too. I just don't see how you get that done. And then Mullins is just kind of like, I don't think you have the right pieces. Like if they were just willing to dump Mullins for prospects, absolutely you could afford him easy.
Yeah.
But sounds like they want some major league pitching. So it's like, I don't know. Do you guys want Ryan Stanek for Cedric Mullins? Then fine, we can talk. But we know that's not the case.
Yesterday, this kind of got swept under the rug, but it's pretty interesting, especially for the Mariners. Evan Drellich of The Athletic reported yesterday that Major League Baseball and the MLBPA have agreed to redistribute the luxury tax dollars that the league makes from teams that exceed the luxury tax threshold and give a little bit to teams that have suffered revenue losses from their TV deals, which obviously the Mariners fall into that category. Teams can get up to $15 million. But they're not going to give more than $75 million in total to all the teams combined.
Right.
So it's likely that not every team is going to get the $15 million max. But if the Mariners did get that $15 million, I mean, that would essentially reimburse them for Mitch Haniger.
Right. But the idea is that like, it's not just a $15 million blank check. It's, you have to reinvest this into the product and into the, like that's the stipulation, which I mean, did they define reinvest into the product or whatever? Like it's probably not like, oh, we'll just add $15 million to your payroll now. You have to, but whatever. It certainly could be an X factor. And maybe if nothing else, it just is John Stan being like, okay, well now you guys can.
Well, I do wonder if this is why all of a sudden John Stanton was willing to go out publicly and say Jerry has the resources.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't trust that dude. Like of all the things that are wrong with the Mariners, John Stanton is still at the top of the list. So I don't trust that
100%. Dude. Yeah. I mean, every single thing that we can talk about and every single person that we can blame here, you can link some of their shortcomings, at least in part to, one common denominator here. But that's besides the point right now. All right. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about Ty France. Chris Cotillo, Red Sox beat reporter, who's also tapped into a lot of national things, says that teams are actually calling the Mariners about trading for Ty France. Now, I don't think we can expect much in return for France, considering he's got $2.5 million still attached to him. He's not hitting right now. He might very well get non-tendered this offseason. It's pretty much almost a guarantee that he's going to get non-tendered this offseason. But one thing that I was thinking of when talking to our old buddy Ben Ranieri last night, Sea Level, who, by the way, is going to have Craig Mish, Marlins beat reporter, on his show today. So you guys definitely want to tune into that.
Just posted that.
Yeah, so tune into that after you're done listening to this if you haven't already. I assume there's some pretty interesting stuff in there about Jazz Chisholm and some of the other Marlins guys there as it pertains to the Mariners. I've said the word pertain a lot today. Anywho, so I was thinking maybe some of these teams, or at least one of these teams that are apparently calling the Mariners about Ty France might be, a team that they've already had active talks with about trades. And maybe France is just someone that gets tacked on to a bigger deal, right? Yeah. He's not going to carry any weight in a deal, but maybe we see Ty France, pop up in I don't know, maybe the Marlins want to take a shot on him, right? Maybe he pops up in a Jazz Chisholm deal. Maybe it's a Jazz Chisholm and Josh Bell deal, and they take a shot on France with the opening at first base by trading Bell. I don't know, right?
Sure. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's like, hey, we'll trade you Ty France and like prospect X, and we'll take on a player who's making a little bit more than France for the rest of the year, and like we think could help us more. Like the example off the top of my head, and it doesn't make sense for Seattle in particular, but like the Red Sox could use some first base help. They might have interest in Ty France. What if you said, hey, Boston, we'll give you Ty France and Jeter Martinez or whatever, and you give us the final 2 months of Nick Pivetta. Pivetta's making like $4 million the rest of the year. France is making 2.5. So something like that is a possibility as well. What's most likely to happen is that he'll just basically the Mariners will get cash for France, and they'll get like $500,000 or something like that, and they'll save a little bit of what they owe Ty for the rest of the year. That's what's most likely to happen. But yeah, there's a possibility he gets thrown into a deal to kind of push it over the top. There's a possibility that he's just a pure, cash dump, and they'll just take whatever they can get for him. Then there's a possibility that they kind of maybe offset his money, like by taking on more money. They take on a bigger contract essentially, but they throw Ty France in at the end to kind of lower the cost that it would take to acquire that player monetarily, not prospect wise. So yeah, we'll see. They have a week, so I mean, technically they could take it right up to the deadline, and I think he was DFA'd on the 23rd. So yeah, they could take it right up to the deadline before they have 7 days to trade him. So we shall see. But yeah, it was interesting no team wanted to claim him and take on the full 2.4 million or whatever it was, but apparently some teams might be interested in trading for him, which would imply that the Mariners would have to eat at least some of that money to make a deal happen, but it's possible. So that's interesting. Something to watch.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So I think that's everything. We are running out of time here real quick, but is there anything that I missed? Any rumor that you saw that I might have missed?
No.
Okay. There was the signature Colby sigh. Had to get at least one of them in here.
Oh, it's been an entire week since the All-Star break of nothing but sighs.
Yeah. Jeez. Telling me. I don't know what the plan is yet for tomorrow's episode. Might be one last fan fiction Friday before the deadline. But anything could happen at this point, and especially, it seems like actually Ben gave me a little sneak preview. Don't want to ruin the whole interview for him. You guys should definitely go and listen to it. But Craig Mish did tell him that he thinks the Marlins might do something today. Yeah, got to keep an eye out for that. And then, we heard the thing about the White Sox GM potentially saying that something might happen today. So it does seem like we're getting close to
talks have
the dam finally breaking, and hopefully the Mariners are involved in whatever that might be. So
despite all of it, I am still really confident the Mariners are going to be active over the next few days. Whether or not they satisfy everybody's expectation, I don't know, but I do think they're going to make multiple trades over the next few days, and I do think that the offense is going to be addressed. To what significance? I think that's going to be kind of a beauty in the eye of the beholder thing.
Yeah, we'll see. But hopefully you're right, and it's at least multiple trades, and there's quite a bit of effort put into trying and fixing this thing. Whether that actually works, we'll have to wait and see on that. But at least I want this team to try.
Take the shot. Yep.
Yeah, I want this team to try.
Because despite all of it, you're a game out of your first division title in 20 some odd years. It's worth chasing.
100%. All right. That's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.